All right, this is your explainer video on the three main Enlightenment philosophers that we discussed in class and their contributions to our democracy, right? So the first one we talked about with Thomas Hobbes. When we discussed Thomas Hobbes, we started off by saying that Thomas Hobbes believed that everyone was born evil, violent, selfish, quick to harm each other, and that his state of nature, his time before government, was influenced by this. Basically, everyone was just running around killing each other like it was the purge. So for Hobbes, the social contract is between the people and the government, and essentially the people want the government to create rules, to create laws to protect their life, meaning the government can do whatever they need to do, and they need to have total power in order to keep you alive. And for Hobbes, the ideal form of government was an absolute monarchy. He felt that one person, a king, was best able to accomplish this, and so he was explaining the need for a absolute monarchy. We don't have that, obviously, but Hobbes was the person who formulated this idea of the government being based on this social contract. So that's Hobbes. Then we move on to John Locke. John Locke believed that the state of nature was basically people having conflicts, not because they're evil, but because, like, I want something and you want something, and so now we have a conflict. To Locke, people were not born evil, they were born blank slates. However, they were born with natural rights, and to Locke, this is the key. With John Locke, the thing to know is that Locke believes that everyone is born with this right to life, liberty, and property, right? And so ultimately people leave the state of nature and create governments so that the government can protect, yes, my life, but also liberty, mine, and my property. That I want government to keep me and my natural rights safe. To do so, people ought to be able to choose the best leaders, and we talked about how this means republicanism, and ultimately government gets their power from the people, from the citizens, and this is what we call popular sovereignty, or consent of the governed. And so for Locke, the ideal type of government would have been a representative democracy. So the thing to know about John Locke is natural rights. People are born with the right to life, liberty, and property. Okay, and this is really important because, as we see in the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson writes that all people are born with unalienable rights, which is another way of saying rights that can't be taken from you, which is exactly what John Locke was saying, that your rights are your own, you're born with them, and people or government can't take them from you. So Locke was amazingly influential in terms of what our government, at least the Declaration of Independence, is all about, the need for government to protect your natural rights. Lastly, we talked about Montesquieu. With Montesquieu, you can skip all the state of nature stuff and all of that stuff. For Montesquieu, he wanted a government that was strong enough to keep us safe, but not so strong that it in any way takes away our liberty. And so to do this, Montesquieu, which begins with an M, Montesquieu says that we need to look at the three main powers the government has: the power to write the law, enforce the law, and then punish people or apply the law. We need to take these three powers, and rather than giving them into one person, the way Hobbes does, that we need to take those three powers and split them. Give one person the power to, or not one person necessarily, but one group the power to make the laws, a different group the power to enforce the laws, and then lastly a third group to apply the laws. And we see this impact in our government because that is literally our government. We have three branches of government: a legislative branch, our Congress, that writes the laws. Once the laws are written and agreed to, the executive branch, led by the president, enforces the laws, and once people are found to be guilty of, or are thought to be guilty of breaking the laws, they are then given to the courts, which is what the judicial system is, to apply the law and assess punishments accordingly. So Montesquieu, 100% of the time, if you hear Montesquieu, you should be thinking of the separation of powers, and that each of those three branches that have the power to do each of these three things, that none of those branches is more or less powerful than the other. We call this checks and balances. You can think about it in terms of rock, paper, scissors. Rock beats scissors, right? But paper beats rock. Similarly, you can have scissors all you want, and yeah, you can cut the paper, but when the rock comes around, you're going to lose. In the same way, the three branches all have a power, a thing that they can do, but there's nothing that one branch can do that can't be blocked by another. Okay, so for Montesquieu, you've got checks and balances and separation of powers. For Hobbes, you're thinking social contract, the agreement between the people and the government. For Locke, you're thinking natural rights, you're thinking popular sovereignty, and you're thinking representative democracy or republicanism, that people make governments to protect their rights, and that to do so they ought to be able to choose the best government and the best ideas to do those things. Okay, so those are our three Enlightenment thinkers and the ideas that impacted our government. Good luck.